Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, it is like April 21st. It's like a week before AP testing starts. And so, I mean, I know this is a video about Euro. It's in the title, but I should probably be doing science. I will put the chapters that I'm doing in this video in the description, both for me and the other two viewers that are watching this. We're gonna start out with the Italian Renaissance. I'm just gonna jump right into it because I don't feel like editing this video because it's a lot of effort. So we're just gonna try and get this out there. So I've got my notes right here. Here they are. And I'm just gonna like ask questions and give you time to think on it. And then I'm just gonna assume you got it right and be like, good job. So, here we go. Who was the father of humanism? It was Petrarch. That is correct. Marsilio Ficino. I'm not going to ask you questions on this because you probably don't want to know who he is. But he did study Latin exactly like Petrarch. And he was supported by the Medici family, which I feel like you should know that they were like a rich family. But that, I think, is like way later in the chapters. This is Italian Renaissance, by the way, if I didn't say that already. Who were starting to break free from religion and started towards a belief in human dignity. They also studied classical civilization and were called humanists. Okay, intellectuals and scholars, they were like the people like Petrarch. Petrarch was, I think he was a scholar and intellectual. These were the people trying to break free from the church. I wish I had a picture to show you, but I don't. So, this started also in northern Italy. I probably should have asked a question on that. It started in northern Italy. Who wrote The Prince? That's right, Machiavelli. Oh my god, you guys, if that's one thing you take away from this, it's probably like, I feel like The Prince is used in like every like era of European history after this, you know, because it's just like that. Let's see here. Who lost power in this period? Not completely, but they lost a little bit. That's right. The popes and the church lost the power. This question is a little bit more difficult, and so is the next question. But who blended together many philosophical views in his oration on the dignity of man? This is just something kind of to know other people out there. That's right, Pico della Mirandola. Okay, who translated Greek and Latin and wrote books in Italian, so people like Petrarch and Niccolò Ficino could study works in Roman historian Livy. Leonardo Bruni, he translated Greek and Latin into Italian. Also the this is the Ichinio guy right here. So, what was the birth site of democracy? That's right, Athens. Next page. This is technological advances in the age of exploration. What was mercantilism? What was mercantilism? It measures wealth of the country by how much gold and silver they accumulate. What was the most favored way of trade? I mean, like, transportation-wise. Where would they go? The Mediterranean Sea. Who was Jean-Baptiste Colbert? He was a French minister, I believe to Louis XIV, who reformed the politician French tax system. We don't get to Louis XIV for quite some time, but and like around what time was this? Like 13th, 14th, 15th century? '14th and 15th. That's right, because the 1300s, 1400s, around this time, maybe 16th century. But everything but one was in the 15th and 14th century. Alright, I'm just gonna name some of these painters. You don't have to know all of them. Maybe just kind of think about a few. These were also famous literature writers. This was Northern Renaissance in printing. Albert Dürer created prints and woodcuts and exchanged works with Raphael. Jean Van Eyck, he was one of the first to master oil paintings, and he signed his works with "as best as I can." Peter Bruegel the Elder, he's from Flanders, Belgium, and France region. He painted Bible scenes from the POV of peasants, the poor people. And like Dürer, Albrecht Dürer, he traveled to Italy to learn about techniques, and Raphael, who was a painter before. I believe I wrote them down. I don't remember mentioning them. Nope. So if you're going to want to find Renaissance painters, this is not the place. Who wrote Praise of Folly? And I believe he said something hatched the egg. Luther laid the egg that Thomas More hatched. Or Thomas laid the egg that Luther hatched. Desiderius Erasmus. In this book, The Praise of Folly, he satires the work and lack of knowledge and focus from the church. Pretty much everything, all the drama from this time was The church is bad. Popes are no good. If you want in summary. Who wrote Utopia about a perfect society? Thomas More. I just said it. There were also different techniques, like the oil paintings, like John Van Eyck, the woodcut, which is an image on a block of wood, and then you use ink and paper to transfer the image on paper. Artists were less focused on human form and realistic settings, and more on rendering, like the POV of peasants. That is kind of a newer idea, like, because no one wants to see that boring stuff that they turned it into. Not really interesting stuff, but to them it was interesting because it was new, and it was something the church didn't want to get out there. Just a bunch of, like, humanism, scholar, peasantry stuff spread. Moving on to printing. This is 1.4, by the way. Oh my god, that seems like so long ago, guys. Okay. Who wrote the first Bible? No! Oh my god. Who? He made the printer. His name was on the Bible. He made the first printer, and the blank Bible, which was named after him, was the first example of a book by movable type because it was supposed to be printed. Gutenberg Johannes, that's right. He didn't make the Bible, he made the printer. And then the Gutenberg Bible was the first example of a book by movable type, which could just be printed and gone everywhere. And this printer, this was a big thing for them because now they could translate works a lot faster, so they could just take the English version. They don't have to rewrite it by hand or whatever. They can just print it. So now everybody can read the English version, because there's not just one English version, there's a bunch of English versions. Same for Italian and Roman and Latin and Greek. The classics are Greek and Rome, by the way. So those are like the old languages. So yeah, you could move everywhere. So everybody was reading, everybody was getting smart, and they were educating themselves on how to break free from the church and how to be better. Because books were rare and costly in the Middle Ages, copied by hand, just like I said. Who wrote 95 Theses, which was nailed to the door of the church? He also encouraged the ability for people to interpret the Bible themselves, not just go to church and the Pope is like, oh my god, guys, God is like great. No. Martin Luther he's like, it's Martin Luther. He wants people to be like, well, God may not be so great. I mean, yeah, he may have nailed himself on a cross, but, what if he, ate the last donut in 200 BC, AC, DC, I don't know what period he was alive in. What is an indulgence? Yeah, it's a practice in the means of buying forgiveness from the church. So if I went to go, kill somebody, I would just pay the church and they would cleanse me of my sins and I'd be fine. So there was no, moral, there was no law, it was the church, it was the sin. If you cleansed your sin, you were fine. So I could pay, which was an indulgence, to be clean. Once again, Martin Luther, he was very important. I have him written down in, all of these. This is Luther and the Protestant Reformation, by the way. Indulgence is the beginning of that. He's a Christian humanist who demanded change so strongly that he threatened Christian unity. He said that good works that led to salvation were misleading and strongly disagreed with the buying and selling of indulgences. He really did not like that. I mean, he wrote 95 Theses after Pope Leo X proclaimed a Jubilee indulgence. This was just not something that he was for. I mean, it was kind of like poor people against, because us rich people, we could just buy our way out of it, but those poor people, they could not. And then they would just like suffer in hell forever. The most famous indulgent preacher was Johann Tetzel. I mean, so he sold a lot of indulgences. He was just kind of like the guy. So if you see him on a DBQ question by Johann Tetzel, just remember pretzel. Then you'll be like, oh my god, he's the guy who sold indulgences. He's against Martin Luther. He doesn't like Martin Luther. These terms are going to go by quick because there's a lot of terms right here. What is pluralism? Maybe I'll just say them. Pluralism is the holding of multiple church positions at the same time. Immorality? Immorality was the decline in moral standards of the clergy and monks. Simony was the buying and selling of church appointments, and offices. And the nepotism, just like Mile Hawk, you get a family member or friend to get you into the church position. You don't gotta work for it. I mean, sure, Maya Hawke's a good actor, but her parents got her into it. Moving on. Oh, we're still in the Luther Protestant Reformation, but we are switching pages. Okay. Who was threatened to be exiled from the church because he didn't back down from his word and said, "Here I stand, I can do no other"? He was supported by many German rulers. He was just kind of like, once again, he was a guy who wrote 95 Theses. That's right, Luther. He was very, like, proud to be against the church, which is surprising because back then, like, everybody was the church, so you would have been killed right away. I'm surprised he wasn't. Blah, blah, blah. Luther insists that the church officials, popes, and councils could make mistakes while the Bible was infallible. Oh. Okay, so I'm like relearning this with you. He believed people should interpret the Bible themselves and that the Bible was perfect. Bible was the Bible. No one changed it. Some random man didn't just rise out of his grave and write it one day. It's like it literally fell from heaven and people should believe it. It was infallible. Everybody should believe the Bible, read the Bible yourselves. The church people, like the popes and the preachers and things, they suck. They're dumb. So don't listen to them. Okay? That was me if I was Martin Luther. Here's an example of a Swiss pastor. I'm not going to ask you this question. His name was Huldrych Zwingli, a Swiss pastor who was a main in the Reformation of Switzerland. And then these two terms, you don't need to memorize, but they would be good to know. They're fun to know. Consubstantiation by Luther. This was when bread and wine was the body and blood of Christ. Like, it symbolized the body and blood of Christ. Or ba. And then from the church, this is what they used, transubstantiation. The ba, bread and wine, became the blood and body of Christ. Instead of symbolizing, it became. So it's kind of like, you know. So this is where Calvinism emerges as well. From, you could guess, John Calvin. He published, this is not an important piece of work, but Institutes of the Christian Religion, calling for religious and political reform. So kind of not really just like Luther, but remember, he was against the church as well. The church was no good. Nobody really, if they were on Luther or Calvin side, if their name wasn't under the church, like the church, like Luther and Calvin, they're separate, against the church, no like. Just remember that. I feel like that's the moral of the story. His teachings encouraged to build banks and money lending. These are some good terms that you should probably know. What is predestination? An all-knowing God already knows where you're going. When you are born, your life has already been set out for you. Who is the elect? What are those people? That's right. They were those already to be chosen to be saved by God. These were the people already chosen to go to heaven. And I'm going to tell you this. This may be a hard term, something you should study a little more. Anabaptists. I'm still a little fuzzy on this. No one actually really knows who these people are. But they believe the teachings of Calvin and Luther had not gone far enough. They should have gone way further and been like, church, bad. Let's like fully abolish it for good. Next is Henry VIII. Up in the French court, oui, bonjour, life was a chore, so she said sail 1522, came straight to the UK. All the British dudes like, epic, yeah. Ooh. Just watch Six the Musical, and you'll understand all of this. He had 6 wives. Divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Henry VIII wrote Assertion of 7 Sacraments against Martin Luther. So they were not best friends. Sure, they were both outside of the church. Neither of them liked the church. But Henry VIII did not like Martin Luther. He had 6 kids with Aragon. Catherine of Aragon, I believe is her name. One of them survived because back then the death rate was like extremely high. Was Mary. Mary, we'll learn about her in a sec. She, maybe it'll be more than a quick sec before we learn about her. It'll be Bloody Mary. That was her. She ruled for 5 years. She was Catholic, so pretty much with the church. We'll get to her a lot later. But he breaks free with the Church of England because he couldn't divorce his first wife, and he really needed to get out of there. And he was like, church, if you don't let me do this, well, I'm just gonna make my own thing. I'm just gonna make the Church of England. And they were like, okay, do it, I dare you. And then he did it. And he did it with the act of supremacy. This is very important because this is kind of like the first official breaking away from the original church. This makes him, Henry VIII, the head of the church. And now he could divorce whoever he wanted. There was new rules in this church. It was still church. It was still, let's praise God and all that, but I need to divorce this woman first, okay? Once again, this is important because I wrote it twice. Thomas More wrote Utopia, about a perfect society. This is definitely something you're going to need to know for the test. Whether it's SAQ, LAQ, DBQ, MCQ, FRQ, all the Q's. Anyway, on to new monarchies. Sorry guys, I'm just Jesus Christ, we have a lot to go. I haven't even made it to like 1/16 of my notes yet, and this video is already 25 minutes and 37 seconds. So clearly a new monarchy was Henry VIII. He kind of made himself an absolute ruler, which is something you're going to need to know with the Act of Supremacy, once again, very important. Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary, she persecuted bishops. She would kill them. That whole family in general, they were kind of like new stuff. They were against a lot of things that, I mean, they were wrong, that people thought before were right. In the early modern period, this is where we are right now, is new monarchies seeked royal control, which set groundwork for modern state. This is just early modern period. This is where monarchies were emerging pretty much. And then we've got over there in Spain, people emerging over there. Both Philip II from Spain actually has this in common with Mary. They both tried to restore Catholicism. So King Ferdinand of Spain over there as well, and then we've got Queen Isabella. I don't know if they were against Catholicism, but Philip II and Mary Tudor, I would assume just like their parents. I mean, not like their parents got rid of the church, and they were trying to bring it back. They were like, oh, but I kind of like this part, church. Because their parents decentralized power. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, because I just saw that thing, and it's underlined, but there's no definition to it. And what is the Spanish Inquisition? Yeah, it's when in Spain they burned and killed thousands of people, which was a lot back then, to convert them from religion. I know. Yeah. And then France and England battled in the 100 Years' War. No one really knows why. But Louis XI, son of Charles V. II, helped France recover. Because they were the people of France. They were the kings and princes of France. And the Louis really brought it back. I would know because I dressed up as Louis XIV and Louis XVI for both dress-up times. So, what was the Concordat of Bologna? That's right, it permitted the Pope to collect all income that the Catholic Church had made. So if I was donating to my local church, it wouldn't go to the church, it would go to the Pope. That's what the Concordat of Bologna did. What did the Edict of Nantes do? This is important. This is pretty important. I remember it being on like every single test. This permitted the Pope to collect all income that the Catholic... Oh, whoops, sorry guys, I was reading the wrong thing. Edict of Nantes ordered the Calvinist Protestants, known as Huguenots if they were in French, because Huguenots are French Calvinists, ordered the Calvinist Protestants to have new rights. So now, like, the church was really against them before, but now they're not treating them like sinners, pretty much. So, nothing else I want to say about that. It's in King Henry not the 6th, the 7th, V11, you guys decide. He was the first Tudor through family's victory in the War of the Roses. This permitted the Tudors family, the Lancasters, against the House of York for the English throne. Henry married Elizabeth of York to legitimize his position. So just lots of marrying going on to make sure I was growing up. Not me. The kings and princes were growing up nice and fancy and rich. What was a gentry? Gentry. It was a wealthy landowner who have not inherited titles. So guys, I'm like reading this and it's like kind of hard. What was the Diet of Augsburg? Diet means meeting, by the way. This was to settle differences between meeting Catholic churches, the Catholics and the Protestants, pretty much. Just a meeting, Protestants and Catholics, and they were talking it out. Clearly it didn't work because our next chapter is called Protestant Reform Continues. So. And then here's some terms you may want to know. The Peace of Augsburg allowed rulers to choose whether subjects study Lutheran or Roman. So now they had a little bit more freedom now. With the Peace of Augsburg, you could choose what the kings could choose what you could study. What was a guild? A merchant group. Yeah. We already did gentry. A noble of Rome. Noble of robe. Not Rome. Robe. Were nobles who gained power by holding powerful state offices. Machiavellianism, who wrote The Prince. We only talked about him once. That's kind of the only thing he's important for. He means rulers should be able to use cunning and deceit to keep themselves in power. The Prince was pretty much do whatever you need to do to keep yourself in power. That's the Prince. Keep yourself in power. What was the Diet of Worms? Remember, diet means meeting. It was when everyone told Luther to admit he was wrong because he was outlawed in the eyes of the church. In the eyes of the church, he wasn't like literally outlawed, but in the eyes of the church he was. And apparently he was excommunicated. Excommunicated. Everybody chill. It's towards God's will. He was out on the night of the town just sleeping around. What the? Right, this is an important chapter. Protestant Reform Continues. This is 2.3. What was a vernacular Bible? Or first of all, what was vernacular? Everyday language of someone. So if we went into literally another country and I said slay, they're not going to know what I'm talking about in any of their languages. They're going to think I want to kill somebody. That's our everyday language, not mine. Guys, don't play it because that's so, it's not me. But you will sadly hear that around the school. Vernacular Bibles anyway were everyday spoken language Bibles suppressed by the Catholic states that furthered the Reformation. So yeah. There's a lot going on here. Who are the Puritans? They wanted to purify England. They wanted to remove the leftover Catholic stuff. So I'm pretty sure they weren't very happy with Mary, Bloody Mary. They wanted to purify England. So just remember, Puritans purifying England of the church. Once again, Luther wanted people to interpret the Bible themselves. Bible was important. Translate stuff. you guys know where I went in my Paris trip. That will be posted. I actually went on it in July of last year. It'll probably be posted in July of this year. I went to Geneva, which was the portal for Calvinism. Remember that? Geneva, portal of Calvinism. The Elizabeth Settlement, 39 articles, modified. Both these 39 articles, Elizabeth Settlement, they probably aren't too important, so if you want to remember something and you have very small memory, don't remember this, but it is a little important. It modified the religious practices to hopefully satisfy both parties. The Puritans thought it wasn't enough. Just like the Anabaptists, they thought they didn't go that far. So no, this wasn't good. Oh look, I'm getting a text from Kay Dents about Loho Madrisha, a 4-pack funky pink wig, shoulder length, bob. I think I'm gonna block her. Yeah, anyway, oh, look, we even get to talk about a little bit Anabaptists right here. Anabaptists reject the secular world. They desired to live in an independent state. So honestly, we could kind of relate that back to Utopia, a perfect society. They probably wanted to live in like a separate society, world where Anabaptists, because they thought they were perfect. They're not me, they're not perfect. They want to live in their own place. Now, we're doing wars of religion. Let's see how far we have to go. Okay. Oh. Those are broadcasts. Okay, so I think we're gonna go to up to the English Civil War and the Glorious Revolution, because this video is already so long. Oh my god, it's gonna take an hour to be put up. It's not my longest video though, but hopefully it'll be my most viewed. Okay. The Wars of Religion. I mean, there's kind of wars of religion already going on already, but let's pretend like there wasn't. Now there are. The War of the Three Henrys. This Henry of VIII, Henry of Guise, Henry of Navarre, or Henry I of France. This doesn't seem right. Anyway, Henry of Navarre, Henry of Guise, and Henry III. These were the people fighting. Settled by killing the Henry of Guise by Henry III. This is how it ended. Remember the Edict of Nantes, which was protecting the French Calvinists, the Huguenots, or the Calvinists, Protestants. This was wrote by Henry IV of France, Henry IB, or Henry of Navarre. That's also his other name. Lots of things going on here, remember? Okay, let's summarize that real quick. War of Three Henrys, Henry of Guise, Henry III, and Henry of Navarre, which is actually Henry of France, who wrote Edict of Nantes to protect the French Calvinists, because French, and then Calvinists, Protestants in general. And this whole war was settled when Henry III killed Henry of Guise. It was just a bunch of, they were mad because their brothers were killed and stuff. It's not really something that's too big. And then, here I come into the picture. Henry of Navarre was assassinated by Catholic extremist Louis XIV. And he undid everything Henry IB did. Henry of Navarre. So, I'm pretty sure he, got rid of Edict of Nantes, so all the Calvinists now, no good. He was an absolute ruler. His thing was the sun. This is literally from his castle, Castle of Versailles, which is where he lived, if you didn't know that. And then, he was the sun. Here, let me go get my little band. I'll be right back. sunband. I'm pretty sure it's up there. I don't feel like going to look for it. But this is me if I was Henry the 14th. And yeah, he just kind of came in and was like, I'm gonna kill you. I'm taking over now. I'm gonna undo everything you did because it was wrong. And I am the state. You need me. I need to have all the power because I'm the best. I'm literally the best. And I don't know what people saw wrong with that because, I mean, sure, he wasn't the best, but I'm sure someone out there may be the best. So, the Habsburg dynasty was from what country? That's right, the Spanish. The Spain country. Ruled by Charles V, Charles V, I believe. He was the head of the family and took over the Roman Empire, Austria, Northern Italy, Spain, and Netherlands. He became king when his dad, Philip I of Spain, died. In 1556, just around the 1500s, the dynasty divided because it was unmanageable. So it was too big to manage. Like, you couldn't, I mean, you can just imagine. I don't need to do an analogy. And then when Charles V got bad health, Philip II took control of Spanish Habsburg and got control of the Austrian Habsburg. So he just kind of took control of what was left because, once again, it was unmanageable, the Habsburg dynasty, once it got too big, so they had to cut some people loose. Oh, and this is kind of, once again, a German fault. There was a weakness in the Peace of Augsburg and allowed German princes to determine if their state was Catholic or Lutheran. It extended others like Calvinism, so they kind of find like a little loophole in it, and then they used it against the church. I mean, in this case, it wasn't a bad thing, but we'll see once we get to World War I and II. Germany's not the best thing. I don't know why I don't know. The 30 Years' War. This was when the King of Bohemia died and there was no heirs. So the Protestants elected a German Calvinist leader, Frederick I. He was a Protestant, even though Ferdinand II was already king. This conflict started the war, so they were kind of fighting over who should actually be king, and it was kind of Protestants versus Catholics once again. Frederick I was Protestant, Ferdinand II was Catholic. Okay. So, there was a few parts of this war. I'm not going to go over all of them because I'm pretty sure you don't need to know every single little thing of this war. But there was the Bohemian, this was the first part. Ferdinand defeated Frederick at White Mountain. The Danish, Christian III, King of Denmark, wanted a German land. His armies were defeated and the Treaty of Lubeck stopped Danish involvement. Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden, his army funded by Cardinal Richelieu, chief minister of Louis X111, won many battles. And then the last part was the French. When Gustavus died, Gustavus Adolphus of Spain, French entered the war on the Protestant side and Spanish on Catholic. The French gained the upper hand, so the Protestant side. And then, to end this, the Edict of Restitution forced Protestant princes to return to Catholicism or they must pay money. Or like indulgences. And stuff like that. Because they're not Catholic, so might as well get money out of them. Oh, actually, that was from the Danish part of the war. It kind of solved it. I don't know, because it was Protestants being Catholic. It does say Peace of Westphalia right here. These were treaties that weakened the Roman Empire. Netherlands and Swiss got independence. Spain, French, Swedish, and German got strength. and Brandenburg and Prussia united, Italian regions removed from Roman Empire, Calvinism got recognized in Peace of Westphalia. And then the power of the Roman Empire was diminished. Okay, so 30 Years' War, Frederick I, Protestant side, Frederick II, Catholic side, they were fighting over who got to be the king of Bohemia. Eventually, France joined in on the Protestant side. They gained the upper hand. Because of the Danish forced Protestant princes to return to Catholicism or they must pay money. But then eventually the Peace of Westphalia, which ended the whole war, the 30 Years' War, recognized Calvinism, and then the power of the Roman Empire was gone. There was no more. Moving on to 16th century society and politics. And if you guys want a quick little lesson on kids of Henry VIII, we'll take a look at that. Okay. What is a primogeniture? Like prim, O-G-E-N-I-T-U-R-E. When the family assures they keep their wealth by passing it down to their eldest son. So like a will now. You're just going to put your money to your son so nobody else can have it. What was the difference between the House of Lords and the House of Commons? The House of Lords was the upper house of Parliament, close advisor to the king, probably England, and then the House of Commons was not poor people, but lower house of Parliament. House of Lords better, House of Commons lower. Okay. A dowry, D-O-W-R-Y, was the transfer of property or money a woman could receive upon marriage. So, if Wanda Maximoff married Moses, Trisha husband, she would get all his wealth. It's a very random, I feel like I could have worded that a lot better, but let's see. And women were starting in Anabaptists, they were a little ahead of their time. Anabaptists were less patriarchal, so women could hold church positions and be popes and things like that. Yeah, I mean, there was different hierarchies on class, religion, and gender. We kind of already knew that. Men wanted to be stronger, but in France, there was this question called L'école des femmes, which was the woman question, and it was, were women to attend school? This is... Let's see right here. Where is... Oh, here it is. House of Commons, House of Lords. Alright, this is 16th century society and politics. And then we're going to do art of the 16th century. And then we will be done. That's our lesson for today. Alright. This is pretty much just a bunch of terms. I'm just going to kind of quickly review this, because I'm not going to ask you terms, and then, because I could imagine being in your side. Never mind. Lent is 6 weeks before Easter, and Carnival, 3 to 6 day period of celebration right after Lent. A penance was a voluntary punishment or confession for having something wrong. Stocks were the form of public punishment, restrained limbs, and you sat on a bench. So like in Gravity Falls, when they were with that random air that they got out of the like honey comb or whatever, pecan myrtle or whatever, they got stuck in the stocks, and tomatoes were thrown at them. And, okay. They started to think witches were coming. Like the Salem witch trials. I wore that sweatshirt today. And Maleficerium, which is funny because Maleficerium, just think about that. That was the power brought on by witches. So Maleficerium, power brought on by witches. And then this is the last thing. Charivari allowed public mock parade to enforce social norms. So just kind of like a big public, oh my god, do it, it's so cool. Let's do social norms. Because I'm gonna scare you into doing it because I'm gonna be loud. And also now, women were marrying older and having babies not a lot later, but a year or two later, so life expectancy was getting a little longer. So, Mannerism. What is Mannerism? A criticism when artists painted in the manner of Michelangelo and Raphael, but lacked in areas that they did not. So Michelangelo and Raphael, I guess those are some painters from the Italian Renaissance. We should probably remember that because I didn't write that down. Who was Tintoretto? He challenged the art by using bold brushstrokes and dramatic gestures. Alright, we've got one of those like random, bunch of artists, so I'm just gonna go through them real quick and then I'll define Baroque. El Greco, he studied in Venice and Rome, inspired by works of Michelangelo and Tintoretto, and he embraced elongated figures and dark colors to create intense emotion. Dark colors, Baroque. Caravaggio, he was an artist who emphasized the ordinary and used dramatic lighting. Large religious paintings for church, Call of St. Mark, didn't idealize the religious subject, captured drama. Artesma, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and Peter Paul Rubens, they were all painters who painted like nudes and female subjects and things like Michelangelo and stuff. But Peter Paul Rubens actually did things like monarchs and princes as well, so he was famous for that. And then all of this ties to Baroque, which is a criticism referred to as the style's exaggerated look, dark colors, dramatic, bold brush strokes. Funded by Madrid, Vienna, Prague, and Brussels, consisted of paintings, architectures, and sculptures. So I think it was probably backed by the Medici family, the rich family from Spain that I talked about before. And guys, that is it for chapters 1 and 2. That was like an hour's worth of stuff. I would imagine you're asleep by now. I would hope so. Guys, this is so embarrassing. Like, I think it's fun to do ASMR. I don't know how people do it. I can talk about Kids of Henry VIII for chapters 3 through 4. So, anyway, that is all. Bye, guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.